So, good afternoon and welcome to everyone. I am so excited to be here today with Maria and Marisol and Sylvia of Joint Development Collective team, and they are going to introduce us to the basics of storytelling so that we, in our various areas of work and our lives, can share the impact with key stakeholders and increase traction. This is a really relevant topic for our social enterprise series. This is the fifth webinar in our social enterprise series, which is a joint initiative between the United Church's Edge Network and Small Business Solver. And I am just so excited about this series, about the potential to connect social entrepreneurs and innovators and to tap us into some great resources. So in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Maria, Marisol, and Sylvia. But I want to first just say a few words to introduce them. I know they're going to introduce themselves in a moment, but Maria is the creative lead and a talented graphic designer and illustrator who has extensive experience in print and digital design platforms. Marisol is the financing and resource lead for JDC and is an innovative and highly motivated project manager. And Sylvia is JDC's creative digital marketing lead with extensive background in driving online engagement and community outreach. So as you can see just from this basic intro of these three women, they bring a variety of resources and expertise, and I know we are going to learn a ton from them today. So before I turn it over to them, I'll let you know that you should be able to see and hear all four of us and also the PowerPoint. And we'll really rely on our chat space, which is in the bottom of your GoToMeeting pod, as a place for dialogue and discussion. So we aren't able to hear or see you as a participant in this webinar, but we want to hear from you. So if at any point throughout the webinar you have questions or comments, just type them right into that chat space there, and I'll be monitoring that and making sure we get to all of your questions. And the hope is for this to really be an interactive time together. So please, at any point, if you have anything to say, shout it out. And for those of you who are watching this webinar after the fact, so after the live recording, you won't be able to see or hear the chat space, but I will try my best throughout our hour to voice all of the questions and comments so that you kind of know what Marisol, Maria, and Sylvia are responding to. And those of you who are accessing this recording will be able to follow along with their spoken presentation and their PowerPoint. So welcome all of you. It is so good to be together. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Maria, Marisol, and Sylvia of Joint Development Collective. Welcome.
So thank you for that introduction. We're so excited to be presenting this webinar. And yeah, so we're JDC, and we support nonprofit social enterprises and small businesses through fundraising, digital marketing, and branding, and we try to provide integrated services for organizations. And our goal, so if we could move over to the next slide where you'll see our other faces. These are our photo shoot faces. So that's another side of us. But our goal today is to break down some key elements that are going to help you succeed at storytelling and communicating with your audience. So a lot of the times when you're starting off, you organically start telling the story of your organization, but we want to be really strategic about your storytelling today, and we want to be really intentional about reaching specific audiences and encouraging them to take action and make change and becoming a customer of your social enterprise. So as we said, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them over here and in the chat, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. So the goals of the webinar today are to introduce you to the basic storytelling so that you can share your impact with key stakeholders. This could be customers, this could be donors, this could be volunteers, this could be funders. And we want to help you carve your story so that they're tailored and really enhance your sales and fundraising potential. So we're going to start off with some basics. There are some basic things that we believe you need in order, or that are going to make it easier to start the storytelling process. So just going back to the previous slide. So we're going to talk about, our goal is to provide some practical tools to support you in storytelling and to get to thinking about different opportunities that are available. So don't feel overwhelmed by the information. So we have, so don't be overwhelmed by the information. You can use this to complement your current strategy, to think ahead, and you don't need to have a radical change. We're just giving you information to support what you're currently doing. So we're going to learn how to prepare and maximize your storytelling potential. We're going to learn how to plan your story. We're going to learn how to tell your story online, and we're going to learn how to present your story visually. So we have a question here. Will you be focusing on communication primarily with external partners, or will you talk about internal colleagues as well? So that's an excellent question, because we're leading up to that right now. So we are focusing. The next component is focusing on how to be on the same page with your internal colleagues. So are you ready to storytell? A big component is that having having different people on your team understand your organization in the same way. So the answer is we're going to be talking about that shortly, but primarily we're going to be talking about external partners. Okay?
Awesome.
Okay, so are you ready to storytell? So one of the first things you need to know is, do you know who you want to tell your story to? So who is your target? And this could be a customer, this could be a foundation, this could be a corporate sponsor, but you need to learn more about this particular agent. So how do they communicate? How do they speak? What language do they use? What platforms do they access? How do they make their choices? What are their preferred brands in the case that they are customers? So prior to starting the process, you really need to have a profile carved out so that you're sure that the story that you are telling will engage who you want to engage. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, do you have the content and team necessary to pull the story together? So you may be one person or you may be a group of 5. That being said, it's very important to compile organizational information together and to centralize all the information about your organization. So this is called a case of support. So maybe we can just go to the next slide to explain it a little bit better. So a case of support is a strategic planning document that creates ownership in the organization and forms the basis of other communication and marketing materials like branding guidelines. So it really allows you to express what you want others to know about the organization and use for marketing materials and communication materials. So if you're a team of 5, it can be that different people are understanding the information differently, so that you're setting a tone. And if you're one person and you need external help, this helps you give all the information necessary for your collaborators to understand your organization. So that's why we strongly encourage a case of support. So the case of support it's a communication tool, and it includes your mission, your cause, your organizational history, project goals, description of your activities that impact your community, who you're trying to target, and also what your need is. So what are you trying to achieve? And so this is essential information for you to put together so that you have, so that you can actually create a story, and so that the storytellers, if it's yourself or someone else, can pick unique bits that make your story you. Let's see.
So Barry, interrupt. Barry's just asked if we're okay to share your PowerPoint later, and I think, well, are you folks okay with that? I know some people prefer not to share their PowerPoint.
Yeah, we are. We're totally okay with that.
Okay, awesome. So Barry, yeah, we can circulate that to folks who have registered for the webinar. We'll send out a follow-up email and can circulate that. So thank you.
Yeah, so this is that's again, like we're saying, this is a whole process, and so we're starting from the big picture. So what is all the information that you need? And then as we go through the presentation, we'll go into specifics. But this case of support is also it's also very useful for you to put together your branding guidelines, which if you have a product or if your social enterprise sales services is key as well. Let's see. So the next thing that you need to be ready for is going back to the previous slide. Yeah, perfect. The one before? Yeah. So are you open to entering the digital world? So there's so many new things going on, and there's so many experts that you need to mentally prepare yourself for working with someone that is outside of your field of knowledge, or that is outside of your team. And so yeah, we just wanted to include this point because it can be very hard sometimes if you're not speaking the same language. So prepping yourself and making sure you pick the right person and trusting them through the process is key as well. And the fourth point is, do you have branding guidelines? So again, all of these things will really help shape your story. Branding guidelines, Maria is going to go into it. So branding guidelines, they stem from the case of support, but they're more specific to your organization, and it's a very useful marketing tool as well. So she's going to go into that right now.
So hi everyone. So I'm going to go through the process of storytelling through visual communication. So before I start, do you know what a brand is? Does anybody know what a brand is? You know, it could be the logo, it could be the consistency through the promotional materials, it could be just having marketing collaterals like business cards and the envelopes. But it's actually really more than that. It goes beyond the aesthetics of your business. Brand is the main character in your story. It has a personality. It has attributes. They like things. They dislike things. They have specific traits. They have beliefs. They have values. Even how they sound and how they relate to people. So I want to give a great example, which is the World Wildlife Fund. Everybody's familiar with this brand. It has a phenomenal, they have phenomenal promotional materials. And the reason why I chose this specific organization, it's because I want you to think about brands as if they were a person. If you think of the WWF, what type of traits would they have? Who would they be? They could be kind, inspiring. What type of food would they like? What type of colors would you assimilate them with? Are they admirable? Are they activist? And the reason why I'm focusing on these traits, it's because for a brand or a business to create that awareness that is so essential, they need to create familiarity with the public, and they need to embody these traits through every promotional material, through every advertisement, and through every platform. You want to make sure that it's embedded you need to make sure that you create experience with the public. The chief officer of the WWF once said, and I've always come back to that one of their greatest assets as an organization, it's their brand. The reason why it's so relevant, it's because it keeps everyone together. Even if you have 2 people working with you, even if you have your first 2 customers, if it's donors, if it's volunteers, if people understand what your story is, what your brand is, it clears clarity.
So just to ask, are you understanding what the difference is then between a case of support and a branding guidelines? Yes or no? Like, do you understand? Are you understanding the difference? Yes. Okay.
Awesome. And let me go if I go a little bit too fast, because I tend to speak really, really fast. So, I want to before we start with the brand guidelines, I really want you to focus on what your brand really embodies. So, as I was saying, the chief officer was saying that brand is a great asset. If, from your volunteers, from your donors, from your customers, from your audience, if you create that clarity of the attributes that represent who you are as a brand and who your main character is, you establish a trust, which is essential for any new business. And obviously, these brands have been, established for many years, and they have a huge team of support and creative team. But there's ways that you can start on a smaller scale. You have to think of how you want people to recognize you by. Who is your main character? What elements will support that main character? And when I always talk to people, and when I talk to people that have their interest in social enterprises or starting their own businesses, I do always suggest that it is important to invest on a good creative team that can support you and can help you to get all your visions into tangible solutions. So before you obviously meet with an expert, I'll give you a few hints and tips on how to go through the process before you meet with an expert, how to make it easier for you to understand your brand and to be able to communicate your attributes to the creative team. The first thing I suggest is creating a discovery session. So the discovery session is kind of like a brainstorming. It helps you understand who you are and what elements you want to work with. Think about the most important part is think about or develop your main character. What are the emotions behind your brand? What are the experiences that you want people to have and feel when you tell them your story? Do you want people to feel inspired? Do you want to empower people? Do you want to make them feel unique? You can even start smaller than that and create attributes that you want people to be familiarized with when they come across your brand. Maybe great customer service, making them part of the community, or even just providing an original product. Think about the terminology, the words that you want to be associated with. When you establish these attributes and you start to develop your main character and your main the main idea behind your brand, you can start building elements that will complement your personality. Things like great marketing, consistency through all the materials are important when you start building those guidelines to follow on, because people start to assimilate those attributes to your brand. So when they see you, they know that you're there to help them, or that you have this specific product, or they just feel empowered or hope or whatever attribute you choose to work with. People start to recognize the language and the visuals that you have established. And remember that when it comes to your brand, when it comes to who you are, you have the power to dictate or to create your own language, and again, you have the power to communicate your own story. Another important part that people don't really think about is creating an elevator pitch. So an elevator pitch is basically a way for you to sell yourself or talk about your project in less than a few minutes. The idea behind it is it's kind of like a synopsis of your story. How can you, in a few words, what terminology, exactly what words can you use to describe what you're aiming for? Now, the next step would be the logo. Everybody knows what a logo is. It's a visual identity that represents your business. But before you meet with an expert, I'll give you a few I'll give you a background on the process behind it, so that when you do meet with a creative team, it makes it easier for you to communicate your ideas. Start researching about the different elements that you want to integrate. What about the colors? What about the shapes? What images you think represent your company? Brainstorm ideas with people and see, and get feedback from other people as well. See out there who your competitors are, what you like, what you dislike. Once you hire somebody to help you bring everything together, it's gonna minimize the process. And when you go through the discovery session, you also start to understand who you are and what you want to communicate to others. Now, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to finally talk about the branding guidelines. So when you go through all this process, when you discover who you are, your attributes, what you want to tell the public, you create, in other words, you create a set of rules that you follow. So the exact definition of branding guidelines, and I don't know if you guys know what a branding guideline is, It's essentially a set of rules that dictates how your brand works. The guidelines includes an overview of your organization. It includes the company's history. It includes your vision, your personality, and key values that will complement your brand. But more than anything, the style guides focus on the personality of your brand. It helps people understand what type of visuals, the personality, what terminology, what values will you design, will your design collaterals embody. It helps you determine the narrative of your visual story. It helps you personalize your brand through all the different platforms. And it really shapes how people see you. So in this slide, I brought up 2 different guidelines from Jamie Oliver, which I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with, and then the City of Melbourne. Just everything out there. Company, every organization has a very standardized set of branding guidelines. And in these branding guidelines, you have every little element really dictates how you treat your brand and how other people treat your brand. And it's really important when you're working with external companies or when you're working with external, when you're collaborating with external people, that you provide these guidelines so that they know, basically, so that they know how you want people to treat your brand. And something that I always, one of the biggest advices that I always give is think of your branding guidelines as, think of it globally. Create a language and elements that are universally understood. So not just focus on your target market right now, but think of how every element that you work with and every element that you provide on the branding guidelines, communicate, are universally understood. And I know I repeated myself, but the reason why I suggest this is because you have to understand that every element, the colors that you use, the typography that you use, what are the meanings behind that? Have you thought about the cultural significance that each color has? How do they tie up to your brand, to your values, and how do these elements empower your story? And I want to finish up by saying, brand. I want you to really reinforce the idea that brand is really more than just creating a logo and creating a few visuals. It's the voice, it's the marketing, it's the essence and the experience that you provide for people when they're part of your business. Think of it like a beautiful, beautiful book that you come across with, and it has the most beautiful illustrations and the texture, and it's just captivating. But if the characters, are monotonous, or if the narrative is not consistent and it has no structure, then it's really, it just doesn't provide any experience, and it just doesn't. So together it doesn't empower the story. So.
Okay. Sorry, we're doing a little shuffle. All right. So thank you so much, Maria, for going over the brand guidelines, and it's very important to really get your brand ready and strong because it creates trust for your organization. So when you do actually come to planning the story, people are going to believe your story, and that's extremely important. Sorry, I'm just trying. Can you help me? Sorry, I'm just trying to get the screen, and my screen is touch screen, so I'm just touching a screen for no reason. Anyways, so in this slide, we're just going to be looking at the structure of a story. So a great story has a strong beginning, a strong end, and most importantly, an emotional middle. And so oftentimes the assumption is that if you have situation A and then it's followed by situation B, the outcome must be C, and hey, we have a story. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good story. So the good story comes from the emotional pull, the emotional middle. And we can look at the diagram and see that the story exposure is, where we start learning about a character. Then onto the story building, that's when we learn more about the character. What are they struggling with? How is their environment impacting them? Are there issues that they're struggling with, or don't really know what to do about? And then at the peak or the climax of the story, that's where you know, we really understand that the character has to make some type of decision. And then towards the story wrap up, that's when usually we learn about a solution for this particular problem, or we learn how a character is dealing with the problem. And so this is very basic, but it's important because any good story has a structure. And so to just have a beginning or end, or, you know, just a beginning and middle, it's not going to captivate the audience. And if you really want to make a good story good, is have a key lesson or moral that the audience can take away. It doesn't have to be a you know, very over-the-top moral lesson, but definitely some practical advice. It can be as simple as explaining how to better approach a problem, or, you know, the dangers of a certain action. We can go on to the next slide. Well, actually, I can go to my own next slide, too. So then the next slide is about story planning checklist. Now, I put the checklist between brackets because these are just some things that you can do that will help your story be better. If you don't do them all, I mean, I know time is limited for everyone, but these are definitely some things that you can keep in mind. So the first one, of course, is brainstorming. And as we saw in the other slide, we have beginning, middle, and end. Characters, lessons, and morals. And then the next point is create a premise for your story. So really what this is to create a one-sentence tagline to describe your story to your audience, perhaps even keeping in mind influencers if you're bringing the story to social media. Because if you can sum it up in one sentence, chances are you can easily communicate it to, you know, the person that you're trying to target, and that's the most important thing. The next one is don't sell your products directly. We have a tendency to do this, even us sometimes. We're like, okay, JDC, JDC, and people are turned off by that, right? Because especially nowadays, there is just so much information that is being pushed on us, especially on Facebook, Twitter, TV, you know, no matter where you go online, people are trying to sell you something. And so why we put this point in is because sometimes just telling a memorable story is more important than you pushing your product and, you know, accidentally ticking people off with the story or people getting annoyed by the story. The next one is to be authentic and relatable. And this one's very important too. This is, you know, as simple as thinking how you talk to your friends. You know, when you are describing happy events, sad events, an inspiring or life-challenging event, what words do you use? It's important to take note of those words because on social media, everything is kind of personal. And so if you're trying to convey a story, oh, sorry, I stopped halfway. I will get to your question. Thank you so much, Jansen. So if you're trying to get to your story, if you're trying to describe your story, what emotions are you trying to evoke? And so what Jansen just asked us, he asked, you mentioned emotions. What kind of emotions are most effective in storytelling? So definitely, you know, heartbreaking stories, unfortunately heartbreaking stories, but I think there is a way that you can do it respectfully and drawing attention to something that needs assistance. We've seen, you know, some of the ads online where they're using small little children in another country to emphasize the devastation in that particular country. And so for some people that type of storytelling is very controversial because they're saying, well, the kids themselves can't narrate the story; their images are just being used. And so I think, you know, as much as that is effective, I think having these characters be participants in the story is very, very effective and also respectful. I hope that answers your story, or not your story. I'm sorry. I hope that answers your question. Okay, perfect. All right, let's see. So yeah, we can go on to the next slide. All right, so the next slide is just some common best practices for telling your story online, specifically on social media. So some best practices, of course, is having a team. This is pretty straightforward, but when you are launching a campaign, not just, you know, sending out a post here or there, but actually having a campaign, you probably need a team. And so when you are assembling this team, you need to make sure that they have the digital skills, that, you know, they know how to edit, write, do some photo editing, respond in real time. It's very important. But I think for social enterprises especially, I think it's very important to have a team that is socially conscious and culturally conscious of what's going on in the news today. Because we've seen it a lot online where, you know, you're having this great campaign and people try to react to things that are going on in the news, and it falls flat because perhaps one of the team members didn't know how, you know, their organization should be reacting. And, you know, once the tweet or Facebook post is out there, it's out there. So really having a team that is socially conscious, I think, is very, very important if they're going to be representing a social enterprise. The next one is to have a strategy and action plan in place. And for this one in particular, I found that it was more about asking questions to you and your team, having questions to take into consideration while planning the campaign online. So for example, it would be, you know, what channels will you be using? Will it be strictly on social media, or will you also be having a campaign on e-marketing, or traditional media? Also, you know, which influencers are you going to be targeting? Are you going to be working with community partners? Also, if you are going to launch a campaign nowadays, you also have to keep in mind advertising. Advertising has become so important in these past couple of years. You know, native advertising, that's what they call it, native posts used to go much further a couple of years back, and they were able to reach people more readily. And now you send out a post, and half the times it falls flat if you don't boost it. So if you are going to, you know, use paid advertising, how much are you going to spend on that daily? And how long are you going to run the ads for? Because if you're going to spend, let's say, the average is $10 a day on Facebook. That's a really basic average. It can vary, of course. But if you do that for, you know, 30 days, that adds up. So you need to see within your budget what works and what doesn't work. The next one is developing an editorial calendar. So this, of course, is very important because just to create consistency within the campaign. And if you can work with a team on the editorial calendar, the better even, so that you can check each other's work, see if somebody makes a mistake, you know, the other person can correct it, have each other's back, because again, like I said, whatever goes out there stays out there. And then the last one, of course, is tracking the campaign. So campaign, you know, is nothing if you don't know what you're getting in return for it. And so tracking is very key. And what we do at JDC is we don't just track the campaign in itself. We have a trial period before and a tracking period afterwards, which is the aftermath of the campaign, where we usually say, oh, you know, we just had this campaign, check out the next campaign that's out. And so by extending the period of the campaign, we are getting more data. And so we get to know more about our audience, and that helps us for the upcoming campaign. Oh, I think Marisol has a question.
The information is also super useful for you to change who your target is. So sometimes we wanted to target someone because we thought they were the best fit, but looking at the data, all the social media data that we found, other people were engaging. So it's actually also a useful tool to determine where you are and who your customers could be. That's it.
Yes, agreed.
That's helpful.
So we can go on to the next slide just to give you some ideas of what a good story looks like. I just noticed a spelling mistake. My bad. Right. And this will be in the YouTube sphere, so everybody now knows that there is a mistake on here. All right. So here we have the campaign by Sick Kids. And this was a great campaign. Probably a lot of you remember this campaign. Nonprofits have been successful at telling stories online for quite some time now. And the reason why this campaign was so successful was because they really used a lot of different social media platforms. And so what the campaign consisted of was they released an ad each day of a different child at the hospital for almost 2 months. And they used TV ads, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and the campaign website itself. Now, I know this was a really big campaign, and I'm not pretending that, you know, you're going to make, you know, you're going to develop a campaign just like this one. And I will get to that later. But there's definitely something that we can learn from the way that Sick Kids told their story, and that's what I'm going to get into now. So the campaign performed exceptionally well on Facebook because what they did was they mirrored people's behaviors on Facebook to the campaign itself. So when you think about Facebook, what do? You go online each day to check if there is something new, right? Latest updates with friends, news, but you pretty much log on a lot. And so they realized this, and they said, okay, so you log on almost every day or pretty much every day. We are going to give you a new piece of information every day. So they used the functionality of Facebook in the campaign itself, which to me is genius. And so they did extremely well on Facebook, and they were able to tell their story not just back then when the campaign started, but they've revisited the campaign several times to give updates. The other thing that they did was to supplement the campaign on Facebook. They drove conversation as well as donations by creating a hashtag campaign. That was the hashtag Give a Day campaign. And so what they did in this particular campaign is that they encouraged people to do something or to give up something every day, that it could be however big or small, and donate the proceeds to Sick Kids. And so a lot of people gave up their lattes. You know, if you like chocolates, you would give up chocolates for however many days you eat them, and then send the proceeds to Sick Kids. And that's a very smart way of challenging your audience and saying, hey, you know what, this is very small. All you have to do is just take on this challenge, and you're going to help a sick kid in need. the campaign was so successful that it drew 37 million donations in December of 2014, which was the biggest month in its history, and it was up from 31 million from the year before. So that is just some ideas to give you that, you know, maybe you might not do the full-on campaign, but there are little things that you can use to your advantage. And I mean, it's a hashtag campaign, right? It's if you have the time to do it, do it. The next part of the Sick Kids campaign is the little boy Kale, of course. And so Kale was then a 7-year-old boy who was at the hospital. He was featured in a lot of the ads. And so you saw him in the ad, you know, getting flustered with his boxing exercises that he had to do with his physiotherapist. And you see him in the ad, you know, stopping and, you know, wanting to give up, and then realizing that he couldn't, and continued punching the physiotherapist's hands. And so this little boy touched so many people's, I guess, hearts, because you've had those days where, you know, you've wanted to give up. And I mean, I'm a healthy person. I could easily plop myself down on the couch and just have a break. But this little boy didn't have that option. And so I think that was why the audience reacted so well to him. Now, Sick Kids realized this, and what they did was, their tagline for this particular campaign was "Make Their Tomorrow as Good as Your Today." And so, keeping this tagline in mind, they revisited Kale 2 years later. So the campaign had ended already, and 2 years later they revisited it, and they show, you know, Kale throwing himself into a pile of leaves in his backyard, running around. And what it makes you realize is that the donations really made Kale's tomorrow as good as their today. Now, if that doesn't bring you trust in an organization, then I don't know what does. Right? Because it meant that the tagline and everything that was about the organization kind of delivered. Now, there is another, there's two questions, I guess, or yes. So where can we go, and how can we develop a solid foundation for digital marketing? What are the best practices starting off? And what should be the end goal of a campaign? To simply raise awareness or a call to action? So this is a really good point. Thank you so much, Josh, because I think a lot of the times, you know, we want to try and do multiple things with a campaign, and I think the best thing to do is to say, hey, for this campaign, I am going to raise awareness, or for this campaign, I am going to call to action. And the thing is, you can do both separately, but I think if you broaden the scope of the campaign too much, you're not going to achieve anything, and it's going to differ for each organization. It's honestly, we've seen organizations that preferred raising awareness than actually creating a call to action, because that they were just trying to get recognized for what they were doing. So I hope that kind of answers it. I know it's not the perfect answer, because it's kind of a gray area. It really depends on what the organization is trying to achieve.
Okay. Josh,
perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So if we go on to the next slide, I only have 3 slides more on my part, and then I'll give it to the other ladies. So I'll give the floor to the other ladies. Like I said, the Sick Kids Foundation campaign is a huge campaign, right? And so we don't all have the money to invest in such a big campaign. However, there are story-like elements that we can develop to get the word out on what it is that we do. And so what we have in the next couple of slides are just some ideas for you to think creatively about engaging with your audiences. So for this particular slide, we have the Furniture Bank. I think most of you probably know the Furniture Bank, but just in case, the Furniture Bank is a Toronto social enterprise, and so they provide furniture to individuals in need at little or no cost. And so what we liked about this particular tweet, I guess, is that they're asking someone who received their furniture to, say a thank you to the people who gave them that furniture. And so it says, "Thank you so very much for your thoughtful generosity. Your gifts make a huge difference in my life. Cheers." Smiley face, which to me is, the smiley face is what does it. So it's very true and authentic. It's visual. It's relatable. There is even a call to action because in the tweet itself it says, "We need more furniture to furnish homes for more families like this. Please retweet." So you know what to do with this tweet. So this is just an idea that you can take, modify, and perhaps use yourself. The next one is of MealShare. So MealShare is a buy one, give one social enterprise. They're Canadian, and so the way that they work is that they work with restaurants, and they allow the restaurants allow a MealShare item on the menu or to be on the menu, and then when somebody orders that meal item, a meal gets donated to a youth in need. And so this particular Instagram post is great because it's very simple. It's something that anyone can do, and it's very visual. It looks tasty, very tasty. I'm just getting hungry looking at it. And so it's also relatable because we all know what it's like to, want to go for brunch. It uses emojis. It tags the partners that they have in the industry. And this might not seem like a story-like element, but if you have 4 or 5 of these posts after each other, maybe break it up with, a post showing the partners or the people, in the kitchen, or, to give a more fuller story. You start seeing, you start understanding what MealShare stands for and what they do. So there is an idea for, creating some posts on Instagram, for example. Then the next one is it's for the WWF, and so the World Wildlife Fund. And so what's interesting about this particular campaign and why I wanted to include this was because it's Snapchat related. And we've been getting a lot of Snapchat questions and, questions about how to use it, how to engage people, should we even be on Snapchat? Well, the question is, or the answer is, you should be on Snapchat if that's where your demographic is at. If they're not there, don't go. There's no point in you going somewhere where you can't reach the people that you need to reach. You have a lot of things on your plate, don't go. All right, so what WWF did here was they wanted to raise awareness amongst millennials to increase donations for endangered animals. And so they found the perfect platform for reaching these millennials. And what's interesting about this campaign is that really it's just pictures. But again, like the Sick Kids Foundation, they tied it to the functionality of the platform. So the way that Snapchat works is you take a picture or a video, you send it to your followers, and then once they watch this picture, or once they see this picture or watch this video, it disappears. And so they tied it to the disappearance of the animals. And so if you look at the last picture of the panda, it says, in 6 seconds, I'll be gone forever. But you can still save my kind, #last selfie. And to me, this is just like amazing, right? And it really shows that creativity is key in any storytelling. It doesn't need to be depressing. I mean, to some extent, this is even a little bit amusing because they're saying last selfie, of a panda. Yeah, this campaign was extremely successful. These images were shared 40,000 times on the first day. And again, like I said, these are just things to give you ideas. We're not expecting for you to create the next Sick Kids Foundation campaign, but it's to get the story life elements in place. All right, I will be moving aside now for Maria.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk about now, now that we're talking about digital platforms, how can you bring your story to your website? When you're developing a brand, I do believe that it's important that you invest in a good website. Nowadays, 90% of the information that that's transmitted to us, it's visuals, and it's important to understand the power that visuals have, and also how people interact with these digital platforms. The average customer and consumer nowadays have an attention span of only 8 seconds. So it's really important that whatever you put out there, it's easy to understand, it's appealing, and it's interactive. Before going to web development and key elements that help you narrate your story online, I'm going to talk about user experience and user interfacing. They're very technical terms, but I do believe that you will come across them, and it's good to understand how they complement each other and how important they are to the development of a website. And please, if I'm going really quick, let me know. So user interface is the aesthetics of the site, is the visuals, is the colors, how you lay out the content. It's the interface. It's really the interface design. It's really the responsibilities to visually guide the user through the platform and through the different elements. With user experience, the name says it all. It focuses on creating. It focuses on the experience that people have when they come across your platform. It really how users interact with the information, with their site, with the navigation, and it's all about making decisions of where to click and where is the story taking you to. Creating a strong digital narrative, it's really essential for any business, and one doesn't come with the other. So with design interfacing, it comes design. It comes the user experience. Without the both of them combined, we will not create a strong narrative online. So now I'm going to give you a few key elements that maybe people don't really think about when they're developing a website, when they're transitioning to that digital platform. And these key elements are very important to support your story online. One key element is why, the idea of making the users part of your story. How can you engage the audience by making them part of your narrative? How can they be part of the story you're trying to tell them? How can you personalize the information, the content, the visuals that is being presented to them? So I added a website, which I suggest that you guys check it out when the webinar is done, and it's called Slavery Footprint. And the reason why I added it to the webinar is because it's extremely successful in what they do. Not only do they have beautiful graphics, sorry, there's a question, and I think there's a question. I'll go into it in a second. So they have absolutely beautiful graphics, and the interactive component, it goes seamlessly. It's beautiful how it navigates through the site, and they talk about a very sensitive issue, which is the modern day slavery and kind of your footprint and how you're part of it, basically. And the way they create this experience is really through the interactive components of the website, through questions, and they personalize all the information that is out there. So let me read the question. Should visuals always reflect the taste of your demographic, or is there room to experiment with different style trends? I do believe it's important that when you design for your target demographic. You know, you need to be able to communicate to them and to communicate to their senses and to the type of visuals that you know they will react to. However, I always suggest that it's good that when you're creating the branding, when you're creating the visuals, that you also think universally of how other people besides your target demographic can relate to. But it is important that you target the audience that you wanna communicate with. And I hope, George, that answered your question. If not, let me know and I can go a little bit into it. You're welcome. Another key element, and I know we're running out of time, it's conventionality. It's really, really important. Conventionality are elements that people are familiar with, that are intuitive for everyone. You know, we all have gone through websites, we all navigate through the web. So there are unspoken rules that we've become accustomed to. You know, things that have been internalized. You know, little things like where the navigation is, where the logo is, and these elements are especially important because it just creates that consistency. You know, I'm one of those people that say sometimes it's okay to break the rules in design. However, you need to know how to break them. So when you're starting from a smaller scale, take advantage of the things that people are familiar with and build from that. And the last component is you should keep in mind millennials. You know, you're asking yourself why millennials are so important. You know, they're tech savvy, they know how to go through the web, they understand technology, but that's exactly the reason why it's important to keep in mind when you're designing these digital platforms. You know, they understand how technology works, they have no patience, so you have to make sure that whatever information is being transmitted, it's easy to understand, it's easy to grasp, and you need to make sure that that you find alternatives to create a perfect and amazing user experience for the people that are being connected to your platform.
So the next slide, hello, I'm back. Sorry. Okay, so the next slide, we just wanted to go into millennials a little bit more because we feel this would be great for social enterprises to think of. We're just going to read out this quote. News about natural disasters, famines, and genocides across the world are pervasive across social media, the internet, and other forms of communication. Millennials take these issues to heart as both consumers and producers. They are a generation that their dollar, their like, their tweet can make a difference. 89% of millennials are likely to switch from one brand to another if price and quality are equal if the other brand supports a cause. So this is a great source of information. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Barry. Okay, so they're a great source to tap into, and they're also great because first of all they're interested in your cause and what you have to say, but also if they back you, if they support you, you can really maximize your marketing dollars because they will share and they will participate and they will spread the word like wildfire. So we're just going to go into this. This is our last point. So into the behaviors of millennials and some things that you can do, some practical ways that you can start engaging them. So millennials are actually excellent fundraisers. They may not have disposable income, or they may, but they're excellent fundraisers and representatives of your organization. So creating opportunities for them to participate, to be an ambassador, to tell their friends, and to fundraise may be another option for you. Their reason for joining might extend beyond the cause. So like we've seen with the bucket challenge and all these other challenges is that they're also interested in the process and in the activity itself. So if you create a really interesting activity, they might not necessarily, they might care about your cause, but they'll really care about your activity as well. So it might be interesting to think through that as well and to work with social media leaders and that they're attracted to spread the word. So what a lot of people do what a lot of people in our field do in social media campaigns is they work with social media ambassadors that have a large following to spread the word so that youth will engage and millennials will engage. They're multimedia, and so just because you use a social medium doesn't mean that they're necessarily into. So you really need to figure out what they're using specific things for. So Facebook might be too personal for them if you're trying to approach them for a fundraising activity, while Twitter might be the appropriate medium. So you have to figure that out and take time to really understand. And also, they respond immediately. So they will, if they have feedback, they'll let you know. And so you have to be prepared to respond so that you can actually create a conversation, positive or bad, but that you create something long-term with them and that you keep them engaged. So Maria is just going to provide some practical ways to engage millennials, and then we're done.
So, the question is how to appeal to millennials. I guess with a better understanding of who the millennials are and how they think, it will be easier to figure them out and know how to get through them. So one key thing is you need to update your look. You know, your campaigns, your website, your promotional materials, your communication need to be appealing and aligned with the aesthetics that they're so familiar with. You know, it may not seem that relevant, but if it's not familiar to them, it will not appeal to their senses. Transparency is very, very important. Nowadays, millennials want to be part of the change. You need to make sure that, you know, that whatever, you know, cause you have out there, that you create an experience around it. You know, familiarize it for them. You know, just don't just say, hey, you know, support our organization, give us, you know, donate. It's more about, you know, well, research and understanding how you wanna be more closer to them. You know, give us $5 and help us help this specific person beat cancer, just as an example. Show them where their money goes and help them build a connection between where their money is and where the cost is. And finally, usability is very, very important. Millennials turn to usability, and you know, they're so familiar with these online environments, and they want something that is quick to understand, that is easy, that is just right there for them. If your organization does not have that appeal of usability, then millennials will not pay attention.
So we're done. So let us know if you have any questions. Just to summarize, because I know we've given you so much information, but I feel like the most important things to have ready is your case of support to understand your organizational priorities, your branding guidelines, and then you can create a digital marketing plan from those things. So just to simplify for you, let us know if you have any questions. Are there any questions?
And we will provide you with the presentation as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So Dr. Henry, where to go and how can we develop a solid foundation for digital marketing? What are the best practices starting off?
So I mean, for me personally, when I do start any campaign, I start with research. Not just knowing what my organization stands for by just looking at the case of support or, you know, looking at the branding guidelines. It's really doing my research on the trends that are going to be impacting the campaign or that I'm trying to incorporate in the campaign. And then from there, creating a strategy and creating, if you are selling, you know, a product, even creating a sales funnel. All those things, all those marketing materials need to be in place. And for me personally, I find it extremely helpful working with a team because, you know, we're working on several different projects and with several different people that normally I focus on the actual strategy, and then we come together and create an action plan. So that's normally, you know, the process that we take on. hopefully I answered your questions, especially as someone with little experience.
Yeah, if you send us your email, we can also provide you with some resources. If you, so that might be easier for us. So because it's a lot to take in. So if you send us your email, we'll send you some useful guidelines.
Yeah, with processes of how you can get started on your marketing campaign for sure.
Amazing. So your email address is on this slide at the end here, and I just want to thank the three of you so very much for an incredibly helpful and jam-packed hour. It has been so wonderful to spend this time with you, and yeah, Josh is saying this webinar was really helpful. Thank you for doing this. Barry is saying huge thanks. So just really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and look forward to continuing this conversation. Our next webinar in the Social Enterprise Series is next week. We'll be talking accounting with Keith Kwan. And so please check out the EDGE website for information on that webinar and how to register. And the recording from this webinar will be going up on the YouTube page soon, joining the rest in the series. And I know you've provided really helpful information that is filling in this great gap in this area. So thank you so much, Marisol, Maria, and Sylvia.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.